Hey guys, so I finished reading the 2 books in the Lord of the Whitehall duology by Jin Hale. I have some strong feelings about this series, and I hope to address the pros and the cons without sounding too biased. Obviously, spoiler warning, but if you don't care, then I don't care either. Oh, so fair warning, there is no audiobook for the series, so my pronunciation may be way off, because I can't double check it like I could with Night Runner. So, to start off, we have these 2 cultures, the Cataleon and the Haldean. Basically, think super Catholic Italy and not so Catholic India, since the Catholic and the Hindu religions are really what these are not so subtly alluding to. Anyway, Curum, a Haldean, is the first one ever to be accepted into this really prestigious Cataleon university, and it's kind of a big deal, but the thing is, everyone is super racist and doesn't want him in their dorms. But then there's Javier, a Catalonian royal, and the thing about the royals is that 100 years ago or so, their lineage was cursed with this thing called the White Hell. Essentially, they have multiple hells, and the White Hell's the worst, and his ancestor summoned a demon from the White Hell, for a good reason. But consequences be what they are, and now his line is cursed. So people are terrified of Javier, because he's essentially a demon lord who everyone thinks will eat them in their sleep. But Kieran's like, the White Hell doesn't actually exist, stop being so dumb, and it's already kind of a match made in heaven. In the first book, Kieran really bothered me. He was a poorly written stereotype, and honestly, I kind of get the whole idea from the Haldean society. Let me explain. So, the Haldean are completely 100% unabashedly supportive of homosexual relationships, although they seem to be content with arranged marriages based on wealth. They're very spiritual, organized, a true community society, and homelessness doesn't seem to exist. The author makes it very clear that the folk have dark brown skin and a primary religion, which is primarily about reincarnation. And all their words that were introduced to you, at least, have a particularly Hindi sound to them. It's not a bad thing, but it does feel like it's a romanticized version of India. In comparison, everything and everyone in Cataleon is white, pristine, they follow one god, and everyone's name is extremely Italian sounding. But everyone is a complete prude, there's an extreme divide between the rich and the poor, and they treat everyone who is slightly different from them in the worst way possible. They cheat on their wives because it's just what guys do, and homosexuals are super frowned upon. The only way to describe them is terrible. But from what I get from this, is the feeling that the author's a real eat, pray, love person, since other than romanticizing Indian culture, she didn't really try to hide it in any sort of way, and I guess it kind of bothered me a little. It felt like a stereotype. But anyway, Kiram in book 1 is really whiny, and Javier is the one good Catalonian, and everything he does is an exception to the rule. But, I really can't get over that, since the actual story and overarching plot is so darn good. Book 1, to me, just seems like a really big filler book. It introduces the characters in conflict without really resolving anything or even building too much tension. It's gotta get you used to the characters before giving them things to do, which is actually super unique when you think about it. Usually with books, it's kind of the reverse. You get the plot and the reason these people are fighting it, then you kind of get introduced and accustomed to each character and their own unique features. So I really appreciate something new. It was cool to be able to figure out who you like and why as a character before giving them a conflict-based reason to. Before I get too much into it though, I need to address something. So I told my coworker about this book, and she looked it up on Goodreads and said, "Oof, I don't think I want to read this because of what this review said." And I was surprised, so I looked it up, and the first review you're likely to see is a 1-star review. I believe it is only one of 2 1-star reviews on the book, but it's about a brothel scene. But let me tell you about the brothel scene. So Javier is one of the top horsemen in the whole school, and everyone on the team goes out to the city for a brothel to let out their manly inhibitions, and it's kind of gross and weird, but this book is trying to pit you against the Catalonians, so I'm actually going to let it slide since it works for what the story is trying to do. At this point, they've had sex, but they aren't in a relationship. They aren't partners, since that's strictly against Catalonian views. Anyway, Javier has been open to Kira about this since day 1. Kiram has known about it and has never told Javier not to go. Not that he really has a reason to tell Javier what to do, but Kiram wants to go. But no one wants to take him because he's a Haldean. Well, the second part of the first book is about a school tournament, and Kieran does really well and wants to go to the brothel. And I guess in Anacleto, where Kieran is from, it's not really a thing they actually have, so he doesn't really understand what it is. So Javier tried to explain to him what happens there and why they go. And Kieran's basically a child and tantrums his way into going. Javier, having done all he could to warn Kieran, basically says, "Whatever, you're an adult, come on." And then they get to the brothel and everyone starts doing things with the workers. Kieran gets upset and runs away and is all dramatic about it. So if you're a mature human being, you would understand that Javier isn't abusive. It's literally paying men having consensual sex with sex workers. The problem is that the reviews, they're coming off as extremely misogynistic about any female in an MLM book. Therefore, they must be cheating and heteronormalizing it. And I'll admit it was a cheap cop-out for tension, but it really could have actually been about Javier cheating. So it could have been worse. So anyway, I just wanted to mention it and bring it up because in case that review turned you off of the series, don't let it. It's so much more than that. So back to the point. Book 1 really just set up the characters, and before the tension. So you kind of get used to the classmates and the names and the statuses before having to flip back and review who these people are. That's primarily what it is. It's hard to kind of describe the rest of the events because it's really just a character building. So I'm going to skip ahead to book 2 because that's, for me, the good part. Kieran and Javier, they had their little spat and school goes out for the year. So Kieran goes back home to Anacleto and spends a couple days there before finding out that Javier followed him. And everyone's like, but they were roommates. And Kieran's semi-arranged to be partner gets into a fuss and it's a bit of a wild ride. Javier's character changes here. He isn't a brooding emo boy with a dark past. He's a studious, disciplined man with a destiny to change. He loves his man and wants to do anything he can to save himself for his man. The action in this book is superb. We find out who the real bad guy is, no spoilers, sorry, and Kieran's uncle and husband, who are the best side characters in any book ever, help Javier find a way to get rid of the white hell inside him. I mean, a wedding gets ruined, everyone has great dialogue and chemistry, it's so freaking great. You see everyone's true colors come out now. This is the time where you're like, oh, I know what this character's about, and bam, they change, they evolve. It's wild. Another great strength about this book, compared to the first one at least, is the sex. Come on, you knew we had to bring it up and talk about it. Technically, it's a YA novel, but it has a lot more sex and talk of sex than most of the books from my yesteryear. Not that I'm complaining. I mean, it isn't as descriptive as, say, a Poppy Z. Brite book. It's not like he thrust into him, and it doesn't do stuff like that. It's a lot more natural and intimate than the other books, though. Like, the moment Javier lets Kieran take him, you can tell these characters truly love each other. They feel real and whole. Much unlike the first book, where it read like a yaoi novel. That's how I'm going to describe the first book from now on. It read like a yaoi novel. If I were to pinpoint a favorite scene out of both books, it would kind of be the diary revelation scene. So, for context, the entire first book, Javier is obsessing over this diary that he tells Kieran is to help me fight the white hell. He knows it belongs to his ancestor, but it's written in a demon script. He can read it since he's infected with the white hell. And Kieran is actually he's like a child. If you have something that he wants, he's going to want to try to find a way to read it too. And Javier, to his credit, does let him have the white hell for a little bit and read some of the books, but he hides most of it. But then, near the end of book 2, we find out that it's literally a pornographic book about his ancestor and his male lover, and he was using the techniques in the book to try to seduce Kieran, but Kieran just thought the entire time Javier was being an ass. I don't know, the whole thing, start to finish, was just hilarious to me. This series kind of belongs under the books with gay leads that ends with a happily ever after, to which I give it so much credit for, and I deeply enjoyed it. Similarly, I hope you guys enjoyed my review of it, and I hope you're able to secure your own copy. If you've read the book, please tell me your thoughts down in the comments, since I found out YouTube actually rates videos through recommendations based on how many comments are on there. So spam me with comments. I don't even care what they're about anymore. Well, have a good day, guys.